Hello, Long Beach, and welcome to the Memo with Franklin Sims. We're sitting down today with community members with a heart of gold for the Queen Mary. Originally from Scotland, the Queen Mary made Long Beach home in the late 1960s. What the Golden Arches are to McDonald's, the Queen Mary is to the city of Long Beach. While commanding our coastline with views and a sense of majesty, the Queen Mary was never quite able to anchor as a strong tourist draw for a city that often lives beyond her means. It was under the city's watch, as the ship's owner, that now nearly $300 million in repairs are needed to keep the ship and even its lifeboats from continuing to fall apart. If there were ever a Long Beach senior in this city that needed rescue, it's our darling Queen Mary. That's why on the show today, we have several board members from the Queen Mary International, or QMI. QMI was formed in October 2013 as a not-for-profit corporation to address the needs of the ship and provide a community forum for its preservation. Mary Rohrer serves as the executive director of the board, and her husband Mike serves as its secretary. Kate Sarah serves as QMI's community liaison. I want to thank you all for joining the memo today.
Thank you for having us.
So, I want to start with you, Mary. The Queen Mary is alleged to be haunted. Now, I have not gone on Halloween. You know a lot about the Queen. Is it true?
It is absolutely 534% true. I've had my own personal experiences. I've been visiting the ship since I was 7. I wouldn't use the word haunted, but there's definitely some type of historical residual energy on the ship. And you either believe it or you don't, but there's definitely something about Mary.
Well,
yeah.
Mike, today you submitted QMI's, I call it a proposal, to the city today. Can you let me know who you sent it to and what's your hope after today?
Well, we sent it to, of course, the mayor. Mayor Garcia got a copy. John Keisler in the Economic Development Department got a copy. Johnny Vallejo, council member.
Cindy Allen.
Cindy Allen, sorry. We've had a lot of names going on today.
Right.
All of them got a hard copy, along with electronic copy of our proposal. And it was more of a letter of what we can do for the city and for the Queen Mary in partnering with them and helping raise the fund that it desperately needs. We've been at this for a number of years, and it's just another reminder of what we can do for the city.
So one of the things that I didn't know, and I need to get your clarity on this because our viewers need to hear it. I was under the impression that if someone from the city wanted to write a check to help with the Queen Mary, that all they had to do was to write that check. You're telling me that that's not the case. Can you walk us through that?
So right now, if you'd like to give a $50,000 check to the Queen Mary, which is much appreciated, there's not actually a place to write that check out to. And that's where we've kind of put some things in place so people can donate. They are donating. We just need to know who to make the check payable to, and people are ready to help.
Kate, I want to turn to you. So you're really going to be the head of community engagement. My sense is that here in Long Beach, folks are a little hesitant when it comes to the Queen Mary because it's had so many operators. How do you plan on breaching that wall and reaching the community and getting them really on board with sort of the idea that this can happen, we just need your support?
Well, so I think there's unfortunately been a big disconnect because, as Mary mentioned, there isn't really a way for people to donate to the ship right now to actively participate in its preservation. However, almost everyone in Long Beach has a Queen Mary story. If you talk to people, everyone feels passionately. Almost everyone has a story about a relative who traveled on board or some kind of party they went to there, or they got engaged there. Everyone has some kind of connection. But there isn't really a way for now for the community to be actively engaged in helping. So, and as you mentioned, part of the problem is that, number one, there isn't really a conduit for that to happen. And also, people might be hesitant because of all the turnover that's happened. So, I think we want to help to create a stable way for that to happen, where people can see that there's an easy way that they can donate, that there's an organization there that is, knows what they're doing, and that their money is going to be used to actually help the ship.
It's unfortunate that we have to have a discussion here about transparency and oversight, but the reality is there are a lot of residents who are frustrated with the city because we're living in the city that oftentimes doesn't want oversight. But what's encouraging, what I'm hearing from you, is that you guys have actually created measures where that's in place so folks can feel comfortable. Can you explain to our viewers exactly why it is that if QMI gets the support of the city, they can feel this is something they can trust?
Well, yeah, definitely. We just received a $150 donation yesterday. We've gotten donations from as far as the UK and Switzerland, which is amazing. People don't want to throw money down a rabbit hole. They want to know exactly where it's going. If we need to raise $1 million to get lifeboats down, then let's do that. People want to help because they care. They just want to be educated on what's going on, and they want to feel like they're part of the process.
I think the other part of that is the community wants to trust where they're putting the money. With having a third party or a third source like ourselves, being able to donate the money, having the tax deduction on top of that, because we are a 501c3, but aligning ourselves with the city and making sure the funds are used properly for a project, and there's proper oversight and vetting of the project. I think there's more trust that's built with that, other than just seeing their tax money being used for something and they don't know exactly where it's going.
Exactly.
Which has been kind of the sins of the past, and most recently with things that have happened, the residents have really lost a lot of trust. And there's a huge opportunity right now for the city to rebuild that trust with the community, but engaging with the community, involving the community like ourselves and the ship community out there that want to help.
So I want to talk about that, because one of the things I was struggling with before coming on today was I'm looking at this bill of $300 million, and you got folks that are saying, well, let's get her fixed up enough and send her out as a casino. You've got some that say, let's sink her and make her a diving exploration event. And so I'm thinking, well, I know that when universities, I talked to someone who raises money for universities and hospitals, and he tells me that a lot of times the reason those people sign on for big dollars is because they essentially want to know what they're going to get out of it. It might be prestige. It might be a tax break. What I'm curious about is a lot of people might be thinking, well, it's Long Beach. How are we even going to raise that type of money? But you've told me about some resources that are encouraging. Can you tell the viewers about that?
So I truly believe that the support we need is not going to come from Long Beach directly. I think it's going to come from the ship's international community. There are people that are ready to purchase lifeboats that are falling apart. That could be a revenue. A newsletter, that could be a revenue. There are serious maritime collectors that will pay top dollar to have a piece of that experience. So, when the ship was in service, there was vendors that were in line to be sponsors. Old English was one of them, the 57 oil woods of the ship. It's payback time. We need to go after some corporate sponsorships and really kind of get the community engaged.
Community engagement. We keep talking about that. I want to talk with you about education. One of the things I learned when talking with Mary is that there were actually city officials who didn't know the history of this ship was initially, when the original intent when brought to Long Beach was to be used as a museum. I've got that right?
Correct.
Okay, a maritime museum.
Yep.
She's talked to city officials. They didn't even know that. They've even corrected her on that. My question to you is, you mentioned about there being a disconnect. If the city officials don't know, and then decade after decade, I'm assuming the public doesn't know. That's a big job for you.
It is. And I've actually recently, I've been learning a lot myself, even though I've been a huge fan of the Queen Mary for 30 years now. There's even a lot of things I didn't know that I'm learning. The Queen Mary has a really rich history, both in her career while she was in service and also here in Long Beach, because, you know, she's been here in Long Beach actually much longer than she was at sea. So education is a huge part of this project, and we really want to educate the community and let them know why the ship is important and her value and the value of preserving her, because there really isn't another ship like her left anywhere in the world.
Right. You said something, Mary, that struck me. You said that the amount of money that's been wasted, that money, had that money been spent right, the ship wouldn't be in the position it's in now. One of the stories that I love, and this is the magazine that you guys produce. It's beautiful. It's thick. I think the printing is great, but also the stories. It's full of color. This is great. We're going to put it up on our page. But one of the things you mentioned in here is there's been a man who for decades has been writing reports monthly on the condition of the ship. And the city was paying $6,000 a month for that. When I think about that, my question to you is, do you really believe that? That if our city had been a little less wasteful with the funds, that we wouldn't be in this position?
I truly believe that. Truly believe that. I'll give you some specifics. In June of 2010, the city adopted the Conservation Management Plan. To my knowledge, they spent about $85,000 for that plan. What that plan was basically they called in experts. They inventoried the whole ship, all of the artifacts, and they did a very detailed accounting of exactly what was needed with the ship, to include, get this, 14 pages of how to raise the money to preserve the ship. They adopted that. The city actually adopted that as a guideline. It's never been used. One of the guidelines in that is to work with small community nonprofits such as us. It even outlines an account. There's 2 separate accounts that can be used. We've asked to use one of those accounts. So we've already spent the money on the surveys, the conservation management plan, the historical element plan that every city in Los Angeles, basically in California, submits. We've already spent all this money. We just need to use it. We need to go back to the drawing board and use the blueprints that we have.
One of the trends that I keep hearing inside of this discussion, and in a lot of other citywide assets, the Queen Mary is a city asset, the convention center is a city asset, and we keep hearing about problems with community engagement. Even when it comes to the Belmont Pool, the Coastal Commission sidelined the pool, and it says the city manager has to come back and he has to engage the community. When we go to the convention center, one of the issues that happened is that the community was not really engaged and involved in how the convention center is now being used to house migrant children. I guess I shouldn't have been surprised, but I was kind of surprised that the troubles that we're having with the Queen Mary, I had no idea that also at issue is this city kind of maybe stonewalling the engagement of the community. What I kind of want each of you to talk to is, why is it that with an asset such as the Queen Mary, community engagement is so critical?
Well, let me speak to that real quick. And I think one of the largest problems why the city does not want to engage the community too deeply is there's a lot of layers to the Queen Mary right now that have issues. Structural issues, the economic issues it's had for years as far as turning a profit, things like that. That it's a source of, I think, a problem for the city right now. They don't know how to fix it, and they haven't been able to fix it for years. So instead of exposing it and starting peeling back the onion layers, they just don't talk about it, and they don't talk positively about it. We've seen for the past years, most of the press about the Queen Mary is negative, because it's falling apart, it's going to sink, it's going to capsize, it's going to be drug, it's going to be sold to China. All these different stories that come out. Not many stories talk about the Queen Mary about being the Lady Liberty of the West Coast.
You're right.
Okay, so why would the community want to come to the Queen Mary if all they see is negative press? So why wouldn't they take this opportunity now as being directly involved and controlling the ship? They've always owned the ship. Now they're controlling the ship. Let's start dealing with these problems. But engage the community in the ownership of the ship. The community owns the ship. The city of Long Beach, all the residents own the ship. What better way to fix it? Engage the community, get their support on how they're going to fix it, and let's do it. Instead of making it an eyesore, but a sore subject in the press. It needs to be turned to a very positive, and we see a little bit of that happening right now. But it needs to. There's hope. There's certainly hope, but it's going to take more than the city officials to make it happen. It's going to take the city residents, it's going to take the state of California, it's going to take the United States, it's going to take the global community to make it happen, because this ship has touched the global community.
And I don't think a lot of folks knew that there is interest in the global community in coming to the aid of the Queen Mary.
Definitely.
So she was born in Southampton. Okay, in that whole region, there's former crew members. There's a whole organization and association for former crew members in the UK. That's all they talk about is the Queen Mary. But it's got deep roots overseas. They would love to see this ship refurbished and become something very positive, because it's the marriage between the two nations. Mm-hmm. Churchill and Roosevelt made this a marriage when during World War II. So what better way to renew that relationship with something that connected both nations?
So one of the things that the city's proposing and having the city manager look into is giving it to the port, all right? And it would be my understanding is that it would be under the port's management. When I looked at that initially, I said, well, wait a minute. One of the last times the port had it, they considered, I believe the commissioners voted to hawk it off. Mm-hmm. And then the city comes back in and says, well, no, you can't, in part because I'm sure residents were outraged. And also Joe Prevotal, who was one of the first to bankrupt the lease, now it's in bankrupt again, but he used to work for the port. Do you think it's a good move for the port to take on more of a management role? And if so, why?
I think it's a great step. They did try before. I think timing was not optimal back then. I think that we need some major exposure, and I think we can get that with the Port of Long Beach. They have a bigger audience. They have a more international audience just because of their day-to-day business. They're already having those conversations. And I think that if I wanted to give money, I would be more apt to give it to the Port of Long Beach for the Queen Mary than to a city. And that's just me personally.
What it comes down to, be it the Port of Long Beach or the City of Long Beach, what are they willing to invest in the ship as far as the expertise of who's going to come in and help or help run the ship? Obviously, the city doesn't have that expertise to run a maritime museum in a destination spot, so they need to engage somebody, and that's really what it comes down to: is the day-to-day running of that ship, but also how much money and effort they're going to put into the preservation of the ship. What experts are they going to engage that have that experience on that type of vessel or that type of structure that's going to give it the proper attention and lay down a plan that they're going to stick to. You know, it's great to lay down a 7-year plan to put these repairs in place, but are they going to stick to it? Is administration going to change in 3 years, and the direction is going to change?
So there's more stability with the port too.
Absolutely.
The community's the constant.
Absolutely.
I mean, elected officials are going to come and go, but the communities, we're the consistency.
And that's where the strong voices need to come from.
Community. Every time that word comes up, I come back to you. You live in the 2nd District, and the 2nd District is also where the Queen Mary sits. Why is the Queen Mary important? I know it's important to the city, but the 2nd District, it has, I mean, when you're standing in the 2nd District, you can see it. What's your Queen Mary story?
Well, I first came to the Queen Mary when I was 5 or 6 years old, for I think it was my grandma's birthday, and I just fell in love. I'm not sure exactly what it is, but I just love the marriage of the design and the engineering, and she just has something that it's hard to describe. It's just it's just a connection to history, I think, is one of the things that I really love about her. You know, I think in terms of how she's important specifically to the 2nd District, I mean, tourism obviously normally when she's open, she's a big draw, and the land around her also is used for concerts and a lot of different events and things like that. So I think she's really important for the economy of the 2nd District, and she really makes us unique because nowhere else in the world do you have a ship like this. So she just really makes that Long Beach, and really specifically that part of Long Beach, special.
The Queen Mary is always being reamed for never making a profit. She doesn't make any money. The operators can't make any money off the Queen Mary. I'm driving off the 710, and I see these huge cameras. And during the pandemic, below the cameras are just like rows of homeless encampments and tents. They're filming. They're making money during the pandemic in the 2nd District. And I look at that. You told me that there are over 500 movies have been filmed on the Queen Mary. Where's that revenue? They tell me the Queen Mary can't make any money. 500 films.
Well, this
is Hollywood.
Yeah, films, movies, TV commercials, cameos, you name it. She's been used more than any other property in the city of Long Beach. I mean, I know because I've got facts to back it up. We track it.
I love it. You come with the facts. I want to close out. Before I do, I want you guys to tell me what your Queen Mary story is.
So my Queen Mary story was 1971, going to the opening day of the Jacques Cousteau exhibit with my dad and my 2 brothers from a family of 5. It was pretty much the only place that Mom and Dad could afford to take us. And I remember just being mesmerized, following up to that, riding my bicycle with my brothers and literally throwing my bike and running all over the ship when the doors were not locked. It was as a child, it was our playground, and it was like a place where time would just stop. I'd never seen anything like that. Going down the elevators and walking down the staircases and, just looking at different things, it just as a child, it made me think that there's so much more possible than just what I knew at that time. So at 7 years old, that ship opened my eyes that I can go anywhere I want in the world, and I could do it on something like this. So I've always gravitated right back to that Queen Mary.
We've got kids in Long Beach who need to feel that way. What about you, Mike?
Well, I did not grow up in Long Beach. I don't really have one Queen Mary story. What I do have is over the last close to 10 years is being involved in different events that we've been involved with, especially the World War II veterans.
Uh huh.
Amazing how these guys are tied to that ship and what they went through. And coming back on that ship after they've been injured, or just listening to them and learning from them, and just amazing what they were through with their lives. And they thank that ship.
You make such a good point. We talk about, we have the VA here in Long Beach. Mm-hmm. We have the Veterans Day parades. We say we honor our veterans. She was the great ghost.
Right. Absolutely.
She is Long Beach. It's because of her that Long Beach has history.
Right. Absolutely.
Honestly, in my opinion.
We're grateful to have had the board members of QMI on the memo this evening. I want you to know, you guys, that you're welcome here anytime. I really appreciate you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Decades before selfies, the Queen Mary was the backdrop of any self-respecting Long Beach tourist with a Polaroid. The Queen was the face of the most recognizable postcards. For scores of local baby boomers, she was their first elementary school field trip. For others, the Queen was a first job, a wedding anniversary memory, or their first encounter with a ghost. Like a lot of us, the Queen Mary came to Long Beach from somewhere else. Built in Scotland, she was once known as the Grey Ghost because she quickly shuttled soldiers during World War II in and out of combat. But at the end of the war, the Queen slipped back on her luxury ballroom gown and ferried the rich, famous, and royal, and regular folks too. Then in the 1960s, she retired to a leisure life in Long Beach. And it's been here, right here, that she served as our city's brightest icon. But while generations of tourists and residents bonded with this shining symbol of our European ally, our elected officials have partnered with operators who exploited her and sometimes even joined in the sport. This is Franklin Sims reporting for The Memo, reporting truth to power. For everyone here at home in Long Beach, have a good night.